Hello, this is Angelica Olivo, and this is Themes Used in Poetry. So, something interesting I read was that reading poetry is like digging for treasure because the poet's not automatically going to tell you what they're talking about. They want you to figure it out. So, the theme is the underlying message of the story that the writer or artist wants to convey to you. So our main focus for poet is going to be Sylvia Plath because she was one of the most dynamic and admired poets of the 20th century. So by the time she took her life at the age of 30, she had already had a following in the literary community. Plath wrote a lot of what she experienced in life, and through what she wrote in poetry, we can see what the themes are in regards to her poetry. In order to understand the themes that Plath used in her poetry, I thought we should take a look at some of the events that actually occurred in her life because they played a big role in the influence, or they influenced how she wrote and what she wrote about. Here are some more of the events that occurred in her life. In the previous slide, we see that when her father died, that had a big impact on her. And in this slide, what we see is that when her husband left her, Ted Hughes, she also fell into depression, and it affected her once again. But it also gave her creativeness in her writing. Sylvia Plath had her first poem published in the Boston Herald in 1940 when she was only 8 years old, and this was actually the beginning of her career as a poet. Throughout her lifetime, Plath had two major works published, which were one, The Bell Jar, and The Colossus was number two. A third one, Ariel, came out after her death. Four themes we're going to look at in two of Plath's famous poems are Death and Patriarchy and Marriage and Gender Roles. We're going to be looking at The Applicant and Daddy, and those two poems are famous, but they were also written after she discovered her husband's affair, and they're included in the Ariel publication. So, in the poem Daddy by Plath, she discusses death and patriarchy in this particular poem, and we can see some of the information here on this slide. In one of the poems, or in the poem, one of the stanza reads, "Daddy, I have had to kill you. You died before I had time." And this is regarding death. And then she also compares herself to a Jew struggling against a Nazi. She says, "I have always been scared of you with your Luttwaffe, your gobbledygook, and your neat mustache and your Aryan eye bright blue." And again, this is a reference to a Nazi, a German Nazi. So in the applicant, it's regarding marriage and gender roles. A lot of the women in those times were expected to stay home, take care of the family. They were not expected to have a career nor be a professional. And again, not to marry was considered unfeminine. And in this particular poem, the bride is reduced to a thing. It's called an it. It's a commodity of domestic and emotional labor. And this is a lot of what one of the themes that Plath wrote about also. So in the applicant, the woman is treated more like a commodity rather than a human being. She's the wife. There's one sentence that says, "Do you wear a glass eye, false teeth, or a crutch, a brace, or a hook, a rubber breast, or rubber crotch?" And again, when the it's the interviewer that's looking for disabilities in the applicant. When the applicant says no, then the interviewer says, "Open your hand. Empty, empty. Here's a hand to fill it, and willing to bring teacups and roll away headaches and do whatever you tell it. Will you marry it?" Influencing her themes were a lot of her relationship with her father. Her father's death took a toll on her because at the age of 8, she hadn't really established a relationship with him. She also used to hide from him when he was around because she was afraid of him. Her father was really strict and authoritative, which did cause an overwhelming barrier between them. Her father's view toward women was egotistical and dismissive and uncondemning, and feelings of resentment and her view of male-dominated world had a lot to do with how she wrote and what she wrote about. Because of how she wrote of her personal experiences in life, Plath was considered a confessional poet. And this is the type of poetry that uses autobiographical manners of addressing personal experiences such as depression, relationships, confusion, trauma, psychological breakdowns, and other forms. Plath wrote, like I mentioned before, a lot of her themes revolved about her life experiences, and we saw that with her theme of death, gender role, patriarchy, and marriage. These are just a few of the reasons why we should care what the themes are in our poems. The purpose of the poems are to convey a message or theme. The way writers manipulate words for specific purposes usually helps us enjoy the poem. A lot of times we might connect with the poem, so we have a deeper appreciation for the poem. There's emotion and meaning in what the poets are writing about. A lot of times, again, that's how we find out what they're writing about. If we really look at the poem and read the words, what they're saying, we discover what themes they're exposing to us. In focusing on Sylvia Plath, I hope you had a better understanding of how themes work because she wrote a lot of what her life experiences were into her poems. We, looking at these two particular poems, we understood like what she was going through or what she was thinking or what she was feeling even. Something that I wanted to say is that at one time, Sylvia Plath wrote, "It is as if my life were magically run by two electric currents, joy is positive and despair negative. Whichever is running at the moment dominates my life, floods it." So, again, Sylvia Plath gave us a really good examples of how themes work in poetry. And I hope you all understood and enjoyed this. Thank you.